Interview begins, a noisy start. When Lindsay Moore prepared to interview Donald Trump, her goal was clear: to put on a show that would engage viewers. Known for her sharp questions and manipulation, she knew that if she could get Trump off balance, it would be a success for her and her show. Trump, a seasoned politician and media personality, was also prepared to keep things under control. The studio was tense. Moore sat across from Trump, their eyes meeting, but there was an underlying struggle in the silence. Moore began with greetings, but her tone was a little strained. Trump, reserved, smiled, projecting confidence. "Thank you for having me, Lindsay," Trump replied, his calm evident, ready for any questions. Moore wasted no time in asking the standard question about what prompted Trump to enter politics. She wasn't just asking about his motivations, it was a step toward getting more personal soon. Trump, as always, responded calmly and confidently, "I saw our people suffering from bad decisions, and I decided that we had to act." But Lindsay was already beginning to move on to more provocative questions. "They say that a certain behavior is necessary for a political career. Have you had difficulties in your personal life?" Her intonation became more pronounced than the rest, and her gaze became penetrating. Trump remained calm. "I've always believed that private life is private life. Every person has the right to their own family." Moore wasn't going to stop. She was trying to stir up a scandal. "Rumors and scandals don't matter to you?" Her gaze was insistent. Trump responded confidently, "Rumors are always someone else's version of events. I don't live by someone else's script." At this point, the tension in the studio was palpable, and viewers sensed where things were going. Moore was getting ready to get more personal, and Trump had already shown he wasn't going to back down. The beginning of conflict, hot issues. The interview with Donald Trump was just beginning, but the atmosphere in the studio was already tense. Lindsay Moore, as always, began politely, setting the stage for more challenging questions. She knew that for the show to be successful, she had to push Trump out of his comfort zone, to force him to act impulsively. Trump, an experienced politician, knew how to keep his emotions under control. His reactions to questions were calm and reasonable, which clearly did not suit Lindsay. She was aiming for a violent reaction, hoping for a moment when the interview would get out of control. "Mr. Trump, many people believe that you came into politics not only to serve the people, but also to realize your ambitions. How do you comment on that?" Moore asked. Trump responded calmly, "Ambition is a natural part of being a successful person. But for me, the most important thing is to serve the country." Failing to elicit the desired response, Moore moved on to the next question: "Your relationship with your wife has always been under intense scrutiny. Some say you haven't been as attentive to her as you should have been, especially during the height of your campaign. How do you address that?" Her question was overtly personal, and aimed at drawing out Trump's emotions. But Trump remained calm, answering with confidence, "My wife is my family, and I have always been there for her. These attacks are just attempts to destroy what is important to me." Moore didn't expect that response. Trump was so composed and confident that her provocation hadn't worked. But instead of backing down, she continued her attacks. And then Trump suddenly counterattacked, "You say I haven't been attentive to my wife. How often do you question the choices of women in our country? I'm sure you've faced challenges in your personal life," he said with a hint of sarcasm. Moore was taken aback by these words. She had not expected Trump to take the lead so quickly. Now she felt like she was losing control. The audience began to sense the tension building, and everyone expected the interview to move into a more important phase. This was becoming more than just a conversation, but a real clash of two powerful personalities. Melania insult, low blows. There was a tense silence in the studio when Lindsay Moore decided to get personal. She knew that the Trump family always attracts attention. Melania, his wife, has been the subject of much speculation, and Moore hoped to draw out Trump's emotions with the question. "Mr. Trump, they say you haven't always been attentive to your wife. How do you comment on that?" Moore asked, mockingly. It was a blow to Trump's personal life, and his reaction could be decisive. Trump remained calm, not letting himself get off balance. He responded with composure, "My wife is my family. Rumors are part of life for public figures, and they cannot destroy our union." His words were decisive, and it immediately changed the atmosphere in the studio. But Moore didn't stop there, trying to press the attack. "Do you think your behavior might have affected your marriage?" Trump, knowing her intentions, responded with a measured response, "If you want to discuss my family, say what you want to discuss. I'm proud of my wife." Moore felt her attempt to elicit emotion from Trump fail. Not only did Trump not give in, he took over. Viewers sensed that this was a turning point. Trump was confidently defending his family, and Moore felt that her attacks were not having the desired effect. Trump ended the conversation by emphasizing that rumors and speculations were not important to him. "My family is my priority, not other people's opinions." It was the final word after which Moore realized that she had lost. Trump, remaining calm and confident, won this verbal duel. Trump's response: heroic defense of his family. When Lindsay Moore asked her question, it immediately hung in the air, a challenge not just to Trump but to those around him. She was counting on weakness, thinking that his calm was a mask that could be easily knocked off. But she was wrong. Trump was seasoned in political battles and was ready to respond not just with words but with actions. When Trump spoke his first words, the studio went silent. His voice was low and even, but with each word the threat grew. He said, "You know, Lindsay, I understand that you care about viewership, and to do that you have to do something big, without any sense of what's going on in people's personal lives." He looked her in the eye, making her feel the full force of his words. Moore felt her confidence crumble. She expected the provocative question to provoke aggression, but instead Trump began to expose her tactics. He continued, "My family is not your circus. It is something I protect at all costs. Melania is not just my wife. She is a person who wakes up next to me for our life, not for your entertainment. Your attempts to provoke me are unacceptable." The room froze, and Moore froze, unsure how to respond. She was used to seeing people lose control, but Trump was different. He not only controlled her emotions, he made her vulnerable. Trump continued, "I cannot be a hypocrite when it comes to my family. I will not remain silent when my loved ones are insulted. Melania is worthy of respect, and I will defend her." Moore tried to regain control. "I did not mean to insult you, I just wanted to know where you stand," but her voice was already unsure. Trump responded, "Your position is clear. This is not an investigation, this is an attack, an attempt to create a sensation." He confidently declared, "People have long understood that you just want to sell dirt on your show." Moore didn't give up, but her words became increasingly cautious. "Are you sure your actions are above reproach?" she asked. "I'm sure no one who exploits the privacy of others can claim the moral high ground," Trump responded. At that point, Trump reasserted his dominance of the conversation. He not only answered her questions, but also dictated the terms. The studio was silent, and the audience probably couldn't believe how suddenly the situation had changed. Trump had turned the moment into a victory, and Moore was left bewildered and unable to regain control. Trump continued to defend his family, his words a symbol of the strength with which he was willing to fight for those he loved. His response was a complete victory, and Moore was left in the shadows. Critique of feminism, Moore versus Trump. After Trump finished his glowing defense of his family, the atmosphere in the studio grew tense. Lindsay Moore, not giving up hope, decided to change tactics. She sought to engage Trump in a discussion of feminism, hoping to denounce his views on women and expose his contradictions. "You say you're defending your wife, but how do you explain your attitude toward women in the larger context?" she asked, her voice firm. Lindsay believed her accusations would undermine Trump. But Trump was ready for her attack. "Lindsay, I know you want to make a spectacle of this. But I work with women every day and I'm proud of what I've done to advance them. And what you're saying isn't defending women, it's trying to make me apologize for something I didn't do," he responded, his voice firm and confident. Trump not only defended himself, but turned her own words against her. Lindsay felt her confidence begin to fade. She tried to justify her accusations, but her arguments were no match for Trump's confidence. You accuse me of being a feminist, but at the core, you're manipulating me. I'm proud that my actions speak louder than words. I will not allow you to tarnish my relationships with women, Trump continued, confidently fending off her attack. Moore tried to rejoin the conversation, but her words became increasingly unconvincing. Trump, like a teacher, interrupted her and put her in a position where she had to justify herself. At some point, her confidence dissipated and she found herself on the verge of defeat. Trump looked at her with a small smile. This isn't feminism, Lindsay. This is just a publicity stunt, an attempt to hurt me. But I won't give in, he said. Moore couldn't answer any more. Trump was not just her opponent, but her teacher, who had won this fight. Personal attack, the battle between Moore and Trump. Lindsay Moore, standing in front of the camera, tried to regain control of the situation, but her words became increasingly desperate. Realizing that her previous accusations had not worked, she decided to turn to personal attacks, hoping to regain confidence. You talk about protecting women, but do you have the moral right to do that? She asked, trying to touch on Trump's personal life and behavior. Trump, remaining calm, responded, You are manipulating the facts to embarrass me. Why are you trying to get into my personal business? His calm conveying the sense that he was not only defending himself, but coaching her on how to talk. Moore tried to escalate her attack by bringing up his past, but Trump again responded with confidence. You want to talk about my past, but you'd rather manipulate my mistakes than see the real support I give to women, he said with cold determination. Lindsay felt her attacks losing steam. Her next question was hesitant, her voice trembling. Are you asking me to think of you as a hero to women? Trump, his calm demeanor intact, responded, I suggest you look at the facts, not the personal attacks. I support women because I believe in their power, not to play to the crowd. Moore knew that her personal attacks not only didn't work, they looked out of place. Trump continued to calmly defend his position, and she became increasingly vulnerable to the audience. When you decide to attack people for their personal behavior, it's important to understand that your words can be used against you, Trump concluded with a hint of sarcasm. Moore felt her momentum fading again, and she knew she couldn't beat Trump. Every word she said was diminishing her room to maneuver. The final attack, Trump's response that stunned Moore. Time was on Trump's side. He was in complete control of the interview, answering with such confidence that Lindsay Moore couldn't find a hook to irritate him. She tried to regain her footing, but every word she said was losing momentum, and her confidence was crumbling like sand. Moore knew that if she didn't make a decisive move, her reputation would suffer and the interview would end in defeat. But then Trump made a move that shocked her. Lindsay tried to steer the conversation toward Trump's personal characteristics, but her questions hit a brick wall. He wasn't responding the way she expected. So, desperate to upset his confidence, she went to extremes. You know, Donald, I understand that you're trying to save your reputation, but don't you realize that you can't talk about morality when everything about your behavior is so contradictory, she said with disdain, trying to regain the upper hand. But her words lost their force with each answer from Trump. Trump, oblivious to her displeasure, made a short but powerful statement. Why don't you answer one question, Lindsay? How old are you? The question struck like lightning. Moore froze, trying to comprehend what was happening, and blushed with embarrassment. Trump continued, You want to talk about morality, but isn't it strange that you have been criticized many times in your career for your double standards? Why don't you answer that question? His voice was calm, but every word was on target. Moore tried to justify herself, but her words caught in her throat. Well, that's not relevant to the conversation. Her voice shook. She tried to pull herself back to her original position, but it was too late. Trump said with a slight grin, Oh, I think it does. You want people to believe you, but to do that, you have to be honest with yourself. He spoke with such confidence that it was clear he was now in control of the conversation. Moore tried to change the subject, but her attempts were unsuccessful. You want to talk about me, Lindsay? I'm ready, but you need to face what's behind your words. Trump said, continuing to mock her attempts to change the subject. His tone was icy, and his gaze burned her where she stood. The studio audience began to murmur, marveling at how Trump seemed to be in control. Moore tried to fight back, but her struggle was futile. Trump knew that with just a little push she would be unable to defend herself. "Look, Lindsay, I'm not going to play your game. I'm here because people believe in me. And if you want to prove something, start by being honest with yourself before you attack me," Trump said with determination, making viewers realize he hadn't just won the interview, he had disarmed his opponent. Moore realized that her chance was gone. She had no counter-arguments. Trump had finally closed all her possible exits. He stood there as a winner, and his final words were a lesson to Moore and the audience. Trump looked at her with disdain and added, "You know, Lindsay, this interview may be a turning point for you. But will it be for the better?" And with that, he ended the conversation, leaving Moore in disarray. Viral exchange of opinions, social media explodes. The interview with Lindsay Moore and Donald Trump caused quite a storm on the internet. Videos of the interview began to spread at incredible speed, overtaking all previous viral videos. Within a few hours, it had millions of views, and social networks became a place of fierce confrontation, where everyone expressed their opinion. Moore's question about Melania Trump's age attracted particular attention, becoming the main topic of discussion. Social media was flooded with hashtags such as #StandWithMelania and #MelaniaDeservesBetter, and a wave of indignation fell on Moore. The internet began to actively discuss her questions and criticism of Trump, which many found too personal and inappropriate. Moore's questions soon began to be perceived as attempts to find Trump's weaknesses, and her reputation was at risk. Memes and ridicule about her actions flooded social media, with many users supporting Trump, saying he was protecting his family, unlike Moore, who was trying to undermine her reputation. Moore tried to justify herself, but her posts and explanations failed to stem the tide of criticism. Even her colleagues began to condemn her actions, claiming that she had crossed a line by invading Trump's privacy. In response, the comments became increasingly harsh, and Moore's attempts to justify herself only made things worse for her. During this time, Trump's popularity continued to rise, and the viral video became a major source of discussion. The media dissected the incident, and Trump became a symbol of resilience and family protection, while Moore's reputation was being undermined. Over time, she realized that the consequences of her question were far more serious than she had expected. Trump, for his part, remained steadfast, strengthening his position in the public eye. Media and public reaction, time for change. Once the video of the interview with Lindsay Moore and Donald Trump went viral, the consequences were immediate and furious. The media reaction was immediate and furious, as if the interview was the center of the universe around which all political, social, and cultural events revolved. Trump, as always, was in the spotlight, and Moore was in the center of fire. The media began to analyze every moment, discussing every word, look, and pause. The question of Melania Trump's age, which seemed like a routine topic, turned into a real scandal, shocking the public and forcing a rethink of stereotypes and approaches in the media. The video was posted on major news portals and social platforms, where it quickly gained millions of views. Articles and reports about the interview appeared everywhere. The question Moore raised about Melania Trump's age became an indicator of double standards and hidden biases in society. Many Trump supporters began to speak out in support of his actions. They believed that he had responded to Moore's aggressive questions with dignity, protecting his privacy and loved ones. This opinion was echoed by Trump supporters, for whom protecting family was an important part of his image. On the liberal and progressive side of the media, it was a different story. Moore was roundly criticized for her question, which many saw as an attempt to humiliate a woman. Critics insisted that such a question was unacceptable on air, especially so long after Melania had become First Lady. Moore became a symbol of journalists who would do anything for a sensational story. The topic of age differences and Melania Trump's age soon became an important part of public discourse. The war between Trump supporters and opponents on social media turned into a debate over moral principles, the understanding of what is acceptable in the public sphere. Moore was criticized for being disrespectful, especially by older people. Discussions of retribution culture began on social media, noting that aggression in personal matters was changing the public perception of norms and boundaries in relationships. The situation was awkward for Moore, and her attempts to justify herself only made it worse. Her apologies sounded weak and unconvincing. Most people assumed she was simply trying to save face after an inappropriate question. Moore tried to restore her reputation, but it wasn't enough. Bloggers and activists began to expose her duplicity by analyzing her previous interviews. Soon she was receiving threats, and her show's popularity began to decline. Trump, in turn, used the situation to strengthen his image as a defender not only of his family, but also of the truth hidden by the liberal media. He continued to perceive the events as an opportunity to strengthen his image as a fighter against the system. As a result, public opinion was divided. On one side was Trump, who defended his family, on the other was Moore, whose attempts to manipulate reality were not harmless. The interview became an example of how the media influences public opinion and the importance of asking the right questions at the right time. Backlash to Moore, mirror of public opinion. After the viral interview with Lindsay Moore and Donald Trump, the pressure on Moore mounted. Every statement she made only deepened the problems. Her career and reputation were at risk, and her attempts to justify herself were not having the desired effect. Society changed its attitude toward her, and her actions began to be perceived as something more than a mistake. A witch hunt ensued on social media. Moore was heavily criticized, called unprofessional, and accused of trying to gain ratings by demeaning women. She tried to justify herself by claiming that her question was part of a journalistic quest for the truth, but her words failed to convince the public. Her reputation continued to deteriorate as users posted old, controversial interviews in which she demonstrated bias. Instead of admitting her mistake, Moore persisted in her defense, which only made her situation worse. Attempts to regain her credibility by interviewing political scientists and analysts did not help. Journalists began to distance themselves from her, fearing for their reputations. Moore continued to claim that her question was necessary to expose the duplicity of the government, which drew criticism from her own supporters, especially feminists, who considered her questions unfair. The criticism reached its peak. Moore refused to admit her mistake, continuing to resist. The media and bloggers began to question her ability to be objective, asking questions about her professional ethics as a journalist. Rumors of her dismissal soon began to circulate, and her show lost its audience. Moore was on the verge of collapse, but her desire to control the situation did not allow her to retreat into silence.